Good morning, everyone. So I hope you enjoyed your vacation for a few days, right? And so today we'll be taking up from where we stopped last class. I hope you all attempted the test. Okay, that was a very short test and very relevant to what we have discussed in the class, right? Your test books will be, your test copies will be sent, don't worry, by tonight 8:30 p.m. into your mails, right? And we'll have an end of discussion video, a very short one, would be sent to your accounts. But if you have any doubts regarding your answers, what you wrote, and any queries, obviously you can again ask in the class on Friday. Okay, so Friday every day we'll have half an hour session on whatever doubts you have throughout the week, right? So you kindly keep jotting down your doubts, fine? Okay. So we were talking about the entire scope and the idea of the paper 1, the public administration. Okay, from there we actually moved on slowly and slowly. We tried to redefine public administration in terms of the syllabus. The syllabus being very indicative and not at all exhaustive in nature, right? And I think the biggest news right now is Amitabh Bachchan has corona. Fine, so kindly avoid that kind of news because obviously it is creating a lot of fear psychosis, and parents, children, and most of the people are getting conscious of this corona. But meanwhile, we have to continue our work and we'll be doing that. So kindly don't get psyched with all these kind of news which is taking place, because last one day was also torturous for me also, right? So the logic is that in spite of all these odds that we have, okay, whether it is a technological handicap because it took me little time to overcome that, we are in the habit of teaching directly in the classes with students interacting. So it is also a kind of cultural change for us, also a kind of transition for you also. Okay. So the logic is that we talked about this idea, then we discussed how to approach the most important part, that is the evolution, the theories, and how to interpret the theories itself. And the scope of paper 1, okay, broadens once we move ahead of the theories. Like we have talked about how the Taylor and the Weber and the Wilson, like how they became very relevant to the theories, and most of the theories were theories of organization and not of public administration, right? So we can distinguish, and I gave you, I think, a diagram of Burrell and Morgan, okay, the quadrant, that how we are going to categorize them. So there was a normative dimension, there was a empirical dimension, there was political, and there was organizational. So when we say political, it generally means something outside, right? When we are basically talking about the activities of administration, right? And its ecological aspect, the governance aspect, and all the factors which are external to public administration as a system and influencing it, right? For example, when we say disaster management, so disaster is not what the administrator can trigger, right? He can do disasters in different manners, no doubt. But disaster management, now the management aspect is internal, disaster is coming from outside, so the internal aspects also need to be studied and the external aspects also need to be studied, and then both have to be aligned. So the more external aspects, like communal rights, external aspects, okay, conflicts, encounters, murders, social conflicts, these are more external aspects. Now the issue was that should we study these aspects also, or should we study only the internal aspect, that we have to improve our administration, we have to improve our management, we have to improve the principles, techniques, tools, but try to understand without knowing what is the end, without knowing what is it, what is the purpose. If we just keep improving our means, our instrument, it has no relevance, right? So this was a big debate in PUBAC, that political aspects need to be studied, because see, we'll talk about Wilson over the time. So the initial thrust was to separate the politics from administration. Now when we are focusing on creating an administrative study, yes, in area of science of administration as per Wilson, and the science could be only established when we dissociate the politics from administration. That was his idea of dichotomy, right, or separation of politics and administration. right? And then again we want to study the political aspects, so this created a lot of debate. Right? But then we have to realize that what is the context in which the administration is functioning, that is the politics. What is an administration without the political control, without the political accountability, without the political decisions? Okay, useless, right? So go to our initial discussion we did, that how the state creates a government and the government creates an administration, right? So there is a kind of interdependent relationship amongst them. Fine. And so we move from there, and then when you go to the another or the diverse aspects beyond the theories of organization or theories of politics or theories of understanding the society, politics and administration relationship. Fine. Then we go into the micro aspects. So you can say the unit 1, 2 and 3, they bring about the theories, the concepts and the principles of administration or public administration as a subject, as an organization, as a function, as an ecological perspective, as governance perspective, as postmodern, all the aspects, fine. But then we move on to the micro aspects. So if we talk about the broader aspects, the broader contours, I think green is too light. So when we talk about the broader contours, right, that this is public administration. And we divide it into the broader domains. Is green visible? I think. Right. If not, then we can use some other color. So, if we divide it into the broader context, right? But within these broader contexts, now there will be the micro aspects, these bubbles. So, if I say PubMed is organization, I'll give you a simple example. PubMed is organization. Now, in the organization, right, we have to understand that. So, in the organization, we need to understand, okay, that there are micro aspects of the organization. Now, who are these people who are working in the organization? Okay. Then there are various departments which are working. Okay, we are dividing the functions. Okay, division of work is being done. Then procedures, techniques, tools, conflict resolution. There will be a lot of conflicts internally and likewise. Fine. So we have to study now the broader scope that we discussed. Then out of those, each broader scope that we discussed, perspective, everything will have its own micro aspects. So now as we move from unit 3, right, unit 3 further to 4, 5, 6, 7 and likewise, right, we get into the micro aspects. So the area of study becomes more specific, more precise, more micro, or you can say more atomic in its orientation. And this atomic orientation is actually which creates, a lot of problems, complications, because you have to study things at the micro level, right? And then you have to link this micro to the macro level. Are you getting? So the logic is that we will talk about all those things. So as we move from unit 1, 2, 3, 4 and then later we go on, then again various issues we study, okay, micro level issues within the organization, functioning of the government, functioning of the administration, society, culture, okay, issues of development, growth, comparative public administration, that is also one very important area. Now see, this is a transition from what we were studying, the American public administration. Okay? So when you go to your unit 7, 8 and likewise, okay, 6, 7, 8, when you enter into that, so you get a topic of CPA, right? You get topic of CPA, you get a topic of DA, you get a topic of public policy. Now here, there is a break from what we were doing or what we will be doing, right? We were talking about theories, concepts, origin of PubMed in the American context and comparing it with more or less with the European context. Now both are obviously the Western context. But when we come to this part, right, this is basically a post Second World War. This is a post World War II scenario, right? In the post World War II scenario, what happened now? There emerged number of developing countries. Developing countries, number of developing countries, fine. Now, what was the impact of the emergence of developing countries? How these developing countries would do or change the orientation of the study of PubMed? Can anybody? Can somebody give me one? Any reply? So if there is emergence of the developing countries, how is it going to change the world, or for that matter, how it is going to change the way the study of administration will need to evolve? Somebody? Nobody is writing? So you might be knowing about the Second World War, what happened in the Second World War, and what happened after that. Fine? So you can say, once the CPA comes, we are more concerned with this. Now the transition which has taken place. Before the concept of CPA or comparative public administration comes, right? We are more concerned with this aspect. So here हम basically USA, little light, so USA, yeah, American, right? We are more concerned with the American context here. Purely American, right? We are only talking about what happened in America, what were the problems of America, how the American administration needs to be improved, how the scholars and practitioners must align together to understand the problems and provide solutions to America, basically decision making in American context. But as this happens, the developing countries come. When the developing countries come, what are the specific changes that take place? Right? This is a very important concept to understand. When the developing countries come, the biggest change is what? The power balance would shift. Is it understandable? Anybody who's come with an answer? Nobody. Okay. So the power balance changes in the global perspective. Earlier it was Western, 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 right? Now there is Western and non-Western now. See. So the power politics comes into picture, right? This is also impacted by the growth of multilateral institutions. The growth of multilateral institutions like your League of Nations becoming United Nations, obviously. Then you talk about GATT, which became WTO, if you know, right? So League of Nations, United Nations, IMF, World Bank. What are IMF and World Bank called? कुछ तो बताओ भैया, मैं ही बोलूं? आप भी कुछ बोलोगे?
Western versus non-Western issues and structures of society are different for developed countries.
Right. So, correct. Who has given this answer? Vivek.
New dimensions of study.
Right. Correct. New dimensions will be added. Right. Yeah. But let us say, what are IMF and World Bank? Correct. You're right. I will talk about that. So what are the dimensions of, what are the World Bank and IMF called? They are known as Bretton Woods twins. Right?
International financial institutions are
They are called as Bretton Woods twins. Right? So what was the colonization doing before Second World War? This is what they were doing after that. Fine, but that is more of a conspiracy theory that we say, it's okay. Fine. जैसे अभी WHO को क्रिटिसाइज किया जा रहा है, right? The withdrawal of America from the WHO, right? So let us say the power balance, changes, and obviously the power which was centralized into the Western countries, slowly gives way, and a part of that power shifts to the non-Western countries also, right? Especially when we talk about India, Brazil, South Africa, and all those countries. You must have heard of NAM, right? So Egypt, India, and all those, right? Latin American countries, the rise of the communist governments. There's so many things happening. We'll talk about them. Though this is not a political science class, but we'll discuss those things also. Right. So power balance takes place, and this power balance or the power imbalance which comes, obviously it creates a need for understanding the nature of administrative realities or social and political administrative realities of the third world countries also. Right? I'll give you a very brief idea how it happens. So these multilateral institutions, they emerge, right, and they initiate a program. If you know, Marshall Plan was initiated for the reconstruction of Europe, right? Colombo Plan, Marshall Plan, and likewise. Now what did this? These institutions, they were basically created to equalize the power, right? United Nations, for example, okay, creating international laws, empowered to make international laws. So these institutions basically were created to provide a level playing field to the Western and non-Western countries and to curb any tendency of further exploitation or capture of power by these countries physically. Right? So, but this obviously did not stop totally. Why? Cold War era was also a product of the Second World War. So the Cold War era comes, the world gets divided into the communist and the capitalist blocks, and that is why India followed the policy of NAM, non-aligned movement, that we don't want to associate ideologically with any of these, right? And we'll serve our own interest, right? So when we talk about these institutions, what they did initially, because they believed that we are economically more powerful, we are more developed compared to these countries. Socio-culturally and politically also these countries are in shambles, they are in anarchy, in a state of anarchy, and they require a lot of intervention, and probably their own capability is not developed enough. Okay. Like Churchill was never in favor of transferring power into the hands of the Indians. Fine? Even you can say Henry Kissinger. Okay, you must have heard his name. So the diplomat, American. Okay. So they were not very interested in giving power to India. They were not even in favor of, because they believed that the India would be put to the dog's law. You understand the dog's law? Okay, that was their idea. Okay, but that is not true. Obviously, we have come a long way in 50, 60 years. So the logic was that they believed in this, that we are the moral guardians. Fine? We have taken up the responsibility of reconstructing this entire world. And it is the onus or responsibility on us, or especially that us was America. Because the Europe was almost devastated by the Second World War, and the American hegemony increased after the Second World War, especially after its nuclear attack on Japan. Fine? And the emergence of America as a powerful strategic nation in the world. Right? So Japan को उसने base बनाया जापान में, fine. Middle East को उसने target किया, South Asia को target किया, ठीक है. Russia, the so-called erstwhile USSR, the nature of conflict was basically created for that. So they started with number of initiatives like START, SALT, Strategic Arms Restriction Treaty, Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty. So बहुत सारे initiatives लिए गए, but this was basically to monopolize the power, or bipolarize the world into the communists and the capitalists. The communists being led by USSR and the capitalists being led by USA. Right? So America became like a masiha of the so-called developing countries, and it wanted to penetrate ideologically also into these societies. Right? So CPA, like we study comparative PubAd, now we study only the models and theories. And people believe that without knowing this we can know this. No, we cannot. Right? So let's say they started what? They started a program known as SRP. I'm just giving you a brief idea because we'll deal with everything in detail. Okay, you have 4.5, 5 months course almost. Right. So the SRP was a program known as Structural Readjustment Program. The Structural Readjustment Program was basically a kind of conditional aid program. Okay, conditional aid program here would mean that the Western countries, especially US and the US sponsored these multilateral institutions, they would fund the economic activities, the developmental activities in the third world countries. Okay, especially Africa and Latin America, they started in a very big way, right? And because India had already taken a stand of non-alignment, so they could not intervene much, but that was a general perception that was developed, that they would provide financial aid with certain conditions, right? And these conditions would be what? These conditions would be veiled or a kind of hidden way of entering into, again, the politics, the geography, the culture of these countries. So somewhere they wanted to colonize it again, but not in a physical sense of annexation, but more in terms of financial, cultural and technological. I hope you understand this logic. So some people may capture somebody physically and some people may capture the others through psychological, emotional, cultural, social, financial and in other methods. That is what they wanted to do, and this is a reality. Right? So they started a structural readjustment program. Right? The structural readjustment program was basically aimed at transforming socio-economic transformation of developing societies. And this became one of the hidden agendas of the Western countries to somewhere enter or penetrate into the developing countries. So CPA was born out of this context. Right? And this one part is clear. It was born out so that they need to study not only the developed countries, but also the administration, theories, principles, concepts, which can explain the realities of the developing countries also. That was the need, but the need was not academic, the need was more political. Right? So balance of power would shift. Right? This one thing will happen then. Again, what else will happen? So, balance of power will change. What else? In terms of administration, what else will change? Now, the Western knowledge would become deficient in explaining the realities of the third world countries. ठीक है, Western knowledge जो है अब वो define नहीं कर पाएगा. What is the need of these third world countries? It will be impossible to explain and understand. Fine. So the logic was that as this knowledge would become more deficient, or this knowledge would become redundant in terms of explanation, there was a need to know more about these societies. That was also one concern of comparison. Then, the third was that you cannot claim to have a science of administration, an administrative knowledge that can be universally applied, an administrative knowledge that can help us understand the universal realities until and unless you compare. Fine? So you cannot say that this person is good or bad just because I think so. No, you have to bring a logic and reason to that, and for that you need comparison. You need to find out the commonalities, you need to find out the differences, and then you need to explain it. So to develop a universal knowledge of public administration, to develop a universal academic knowledge, universal academic explanation of what is happening around the world, you need to compare things. So whatever you conclude now can be more acceptable, but whatever you were concluding earlier, that was more with respect to the American society only. But the context of Indian society is different. If you Just go back and review what we talked about in the ecological perspective or socio-cultural perspective of public administration. So, need for American society could be explained by this knowledge prior to CPA, okay, the American PubAd, but the need for the non-Western society could not be explained. Their conclusions were effective in American society, but their conclusions were not effective here. Right? Now, these were certain areas, okay, or these were certain, you can say, needs, which made the study of comparative PubAd, inevitable. So, various models and theories emerged, like Riggs' ecological model is very popular. David Easton's political system model is also very popular. Then you have Farrell-Hedy's model, which is very much asked in the examination. Fine. So Farrell-Hedy and Riggs. I hope this is visible. Farrell-Hedy, right? And Fred Riggs. Farrell-Hedy and Fred Riggs. They became very popular contributors and many questions are asked around them. This is also a very important area, in fact a very complicated area. Fine, but if you have understood till now, okay, with the logic that we have talked about, that means it is not at all complicated for you, right? So CPA is one area which is to be focused in paper 1. There is a book called R.K. Arora. There is a book by Hoshiar Singh. Fine. There is another book which is obviously by Mohit Bhattacharya, but it is not uniquely on CPA. Fine. But Sapru, that we talked about theories, also has certain elements of CPA, right? So there is a book by all these people, but obviously I told you, like, you don't need to study. We'll do everything, right? Our lectures would imbibe all these things. But obviously I will tell you over the time, we'll give you the notes, everything will be there. So, what exactly, number of pages, what exactly you need to read before you come to the class, fine. So, this CPA becomes important now. CPA gives birth to the concept of DA. The Development Administration. Now, development administration, what do you understand by this term development administration? Can I give you a, let's say, a small quiz, right? If I write these two statements, administrative development administration, administration of development of administration. Which are same, which are different? Or which are similar, which are different? Kindly think so I can have a little sip of coffee. Which are same, which are different? 1 and 4, Vivek? Huh? No. So Vivek says that 1 and 4 are
Same. 2 and 3 are same.
okay.
Arjun, same. 1 and 4. Shrishti, 1 and 4. Anshik, 2 and 4 same.
2 and 4. Somebody says 2 and 4 also.
Ruth, 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
Shrishti also.
So obviously no marks for this. Right? I don't want to create a war within you. Right? See, obviously the logic is that 1 and 4 are same when we say administrative development. That simply means how to develop the administrative capacity, the capability of administration, development of administration. When I say development administration, that means it is the how to administer the development. Right? Administration of development. So 2 is equal to 3 almost. 1 is equal to 4. So you can pat your back. Those who have said correct, those who have not said it correctly, it's okay, they can always learn. Right? So you think why you could not relate it, right? So it is the terminology which is very important in PubEd, and it is only just the terminology. If you understand it logically, fine, it is the easiest subject in the world. Okay. Only thing is people don't want to use this. I don't know for what purpose they have kept it, but it's okay. Right? अब तो TikTok भी नहीं है तो इसका क्या करेंगे? ठीक है? So logic is that okay, we have now development administration comes as an area which includes both. So earlier the perception was that development administration, okay, that's why like just now I said that the comparative PubEd came because the Western knowledge was deficient in improving or understanding the socio, political, cultural, historical aspects of the developing countries. So what they did, they created a subspecies, a sub-academic area, a sub-discipline within the public administration known as CPA, then a sub-discipline within the CPA or sub-discipline within the public administration or a sub-discipline under the CPA known as the development administration. Right? So the logic can be, if this part is visible, right? So this part is visible. So let us say, ये हो गया PA, this is PubEd, this is CPA for example, and this is the B. So CPA, PA, CPA, BA. Now this is the relationship. So DA was created now with a specific intention of understanding the developing societies. So you can say 1950s and 60s for the first time in the post-World War II scenario, there emerged a consciousness amongst the Western scholars that we need to create another sub-area in the study of public administration which would be dealing with the non-Western countries. So you see, the non-Western countries, their administrative problems, their situations, their circumstances finds a voice in public administration through the DA. Is this logic clear to you? Fine? So far, so good. Okay. So that's okay. Now, so DA becomes another area. Now, obviously, if you understand that most of the Western models were created. Western economic models were created. Like for example, let us see. Most of the economists and economic students are confronted with the idea, and most of the UPSC aspirants also, growth versus development. Right? So growth versus development. Now how we define growth versus development? How we define it? कोई है? किसी के पास आंसर होगा भी? Growth is a relative term. Fine? It's like asking, are you Vivek? Or are you somebody? You say, no, I am not. But you don't tell your name. Who are you?
Growth is just economic growth.
Okay. Growth is economic. Growth is relative term. Both are also acceptable.
Growth refers to increasing
Numbers. Quantitative. Shristi tries to say that growth is quantitative. Right.
Development also includes human factors.
Right. Correct.
Arjun,
Anybody?
Development is inclusive and growth is material.
What about sleeping partners here? Sleeping students?
Homer, growth can be singular but development is plural.
Let me give you a simple example. How do you, let us say, okay, this is just because we are unraveling the dimensions of your subject. Okay, we are not studying.
Development is vital, then growth.
Right, correct. Right. All of them somewhere indicated the idea. Now let me give you an example for it. Let's say, ये मुझे बताइए कि let's say, how do we calculate the per capita income? Right? How do we calculate the per capita income? What is the per capita income as a measure? Right? अब per capita income कैसे calculate होता है? हमारे पास एक GDP है. I'm not an economist, but I had an interest in economics. Fine, so I delved into certain things. Let us say GDP है. Right? GDP is the measure of the gross domestic product. That means whatever goods and services you produce in a country, if you monetize it, that is GDP. Convert कर लो उसको money में. Right? So GDP. Right? What is GNP? Gross National Product. GDP. What is GNP? What is GDP? What is GNP? अब GDP को, ठीक है, GDP में आप जो है you eliminate the depreciation. ठीक है, आपने 10 रुपए कमाए, सो आपने उसमें 2 रुपए लगाए भी, ठीक है, एंड उस whatever you earned, let's say for example, fine, it incurred a cost at the same time, and somewhere whatever you created, it also depreciated at the same time. भाई नई कार लिए तो स्क्रैच लग गया ना, लग गया तो उसके 10,000 रुपए कम हो गए. इट्स अ ब्रांड न्यू कार, यू डिडंट इवन ड्राइव, जस्ट अ स्क्रैच. So everything that are material, they have a depreciative value. Right? Let us say, हम उसको simplify करते हैं. So GDP से आपने depreciation हटाया, ठीक है? You got gross national product. Right? इसमें से आपने net factor income from abroad. There are people who are earning in our own countries, and they are also taking the money from us. So actually we earned 100 crores, but out of that 20 crores were paid as remittances outside. Or people earned from here, sent it home. Right? So इसको हमने हटा दिया. So NNP आ गया, Net National Product. कि जितना हमने क्रिएट किया, उसमें से कुछ चला गया, बाकी हमारा हो गया, बच गया. Right? अब इसको हम एक फैक्टर कॉस्ट लेते हैं. This is visible, this part. Right. Okay, I'm writing it here. Okay. So इसको we take at the factor cost. Factor cost and the cost of production. Okay. Let me come here. It's more clear here. Right. So if we take the factor cost NNP, factor cost, factor क्या है? Land, labor, capital, whatever. Right. फैक्टर कॉस्ट भी इसको हम लेते हैं तो ये बन जाता है नेशनल इनकम. ठीक है, नेशनल इनकम से भी हम डेप्रिसिएशन हटाते हैं तो नेट नेशनल इनकम बन जाता है. बट नेशनल इनकम आप मान लो, लेट बी सिंप्लीफाइड, वी आर नॉट इन इकोनॉमिक्स क्लास बट वी कैन डू इट. ठीक है, अब नेशनल इनकम को, ठीक है, व्हेन यू डिवाइड बाय पॉपुलेशन, और दिस इज अ कॉमन मिथ कि इसको डिवाइड करो पॉपुलेशन से, नहीं, इट्स नॉट दैट सिंपल. जब आप नेशनल इनकम को पॉपुलेशन से डिवाइड करोगे तो you get a per capita income. Now what is per capita income means? कुछ लोग आंसर्स दे रहे हैं. Right? So
It's all about GDP and GNP. And GNP is total earnings or production by nationals, while GDP is earned or
is a gross.
within
Yeah.
the boundaries of national.
Correct. Correct.
GDP minus monetary value of domestic production.
Yeah. Okay. So depreciation. So we have added in general term, right? Let us say so somewhere I am correct, right?
Abhishek, GNP is equal to GDP minus deficit.
Yeah, so my economics is also good, don't worry. Fine. Let us say, so we move from here to here, we got the national income. Now national income divided by population is the per capita income. Per capita income का मतलब क्या? That everybody. अब देखो इंडिया का per capita income let's say 44,000 something है, मतलब से assume इतना ही है, almost अब कम हो गया होगा. Fine, which is much below the global average. Fine. Even smaller countries like Nordic countries, obviously Nordic countries are very rich, no doubt. Fine. But when you think of per capita income, which is already very less compared to the global average, right? Then you can understand that it is just an average calculation. That means if we say per capita income 45,000 in India mein hai, something, let's say, right? So somebody might be having 5,000, somebody might be having 90,000, right? That means what? Somebody might be having 5, somebody might be having 100. Average comes to something like 44, let us say. What does this indicate? That per capita income is not a correct measurement of how the wealth has been distributed in this country. Not everyone holds the equivalent amount of money or capital with them or savings with them if we use this parameter. So this parameter is a fraud. Is it or not? This parameter is not at all giving us the real truth. So the logic is that when I think India's GDP is increasing, I also have to think whether the per capita income is increasing. Then I also have to think whether this per capita income is the real measure of the increasing growth, or whether this per capita income actually indicates that the growth is evenly distributed, okay, which it does not. So growth ये है. Uneven distribution नहीं हुआ तो development नहीं. Sorry, uneven distribution हुआ तो development नहीं हुआ. Even distribution हुआ तो development हुआ. So what? Growth is just an input to development. Right? Growth is the quantifiable aspect of the development. Development is more of a qualitative aspect, though it includes this also. Without this, it is not possible. This is the most modern concept now. And earlier we used to distinguish versus this, but now it is not this versus this. This is the input to this. So if GDP is increasing, yes, it is good. But is GDP creating inclusive growth? No, not good. If GDP is increasing, okay, is it contributing to the betterment of lives of people, not only in terms of their physical well-being, but also mental well-being, social well-being, cultural well-being? अगर ऐसा हो रहा है तो डेवलपमेंट. अब ये सारे एस्पेक्ट्स all these aspects, from where did they come now? So the Western countries initially, their idea of DEA revolved around growth. Right? They believed in this growth-centric model. Okay, they believed in this growth-centric model where they believed that all the economic indicators all the economic indicators devoid of social indicators, cultural, minus all this, right? So growth is what? According to them, economic growth minus all this. They never considered this to be a vital aspect of understanding that whether the growth is translating into development or not, because that was their model, industrial model, capitalist model, growth-led model. Right? So this growth-led model, okay, obviously became the buzzword, fine? It became the key agenda for all the Western scholars Western economists, technocrats, managers, and all those people who were, groomed into the Western culture, and they believe that, okay, yes, in third world countries में industrialization करो, investment promote करो, technological knowledge दो, technological know-how दो, and let them grow, and once their GDP grows, once the GDP increases, they are going to benefit. Simply. They did not take into consideration the fractures which were existent in this society, the crevices of socio-cultural divides, caste, creed, patriarchy, region, religion, many things which existed in this society and which would obviously engulf this growth somewhere. It would divert this growth somewhere. एक typical example और देता हूँ, so that you understand it in a better manner. Now, so this is all about DA. If you study the DA syllabus in PubEd, you will say DA मतलब यार ये मॉडल पढ़ना है, ये मॉडल पढ़ना पड़ेगा. Question कभी ऐसा नहीं आएगा. This is how you link paper 1 with paper 2. This is what the linkage is. What we are doing, we are linking all the examples of Indian administration, Indian society into this. This is a purely theoretical concept in paper 1. But we are using all the applied aspects of paper 2 here. ठीक है. एक और सिंपल मैं एग्जांपल आपको देता हूं. फाइन. तो एक सिंपल सा लॉजिक है. लेट अस से दैट आपने क्या किया, व्हाट यू डिड, 1952, ठीक है, या 1950 में आपने प्लानिंग कमीशन बनाया. ठीक है, मार्च 1950 प्लानिंग कमीशन. प्लानिंग कमीशन का क्या रोल था? व्हाट वाज द रोल ऑफ प्लानिंग कमीशन? It is more of an outdated idea now. Obviously, Modi government brought the or changed or removed or eliminated the planning commission to bring the Niti Aayog now. Right? What was the role of planning commission? What is planning? Development and planning go hand in hand. We have already seen. Okay, our class will never be one way. That is so patriarchal. Is it or not? It has to be democratic. That is our tagline. That is what we are doing. And that is what we intend to do.
Arjun, make indicative plans for development in our country.
Indicative plans for development, yes. But indicative plans to बाद में आए.
Thinking before taking actions.
Right, correct. You think before taking action.
Allocation of funds for development programs.
Right. Allocation of resources, that is also a very important aspect of planning.
Srinivas, how the country wants to grow in different sectors.
Yeah, correct. That is also correct. How we are going to lead this growth into different sectors. That is also one big agenda. But मैं उसको और simplify कर देता हूँ. ठीक है? ठीक है. If I say planning is about bridging the gap between right? Planning is about, we'll talk about it. Planning is about bridging the gap between your goals and your needs. Do you agree? Bridging the gap between the goals and the means, the resources that we have and what we want to achieve. This is what we want to bridge, this gap. And obviously to define realistic goals, right? To carry on achieving the realistic goals with the available means we have, so that how we can optimize this allocation. Right? Are you understanding? How we can optimize this allocation? How do we identify the resource, first of all? What do we call a resource? Whether this is a resource or not, how can this resource be multiplied into many times into certain benefits? How can this resource be acquired? How can this resource be mobilized? How can this resource be put into action so that we achieve what we want? Is it understandable? So let us say, what is planning about? So when the government creates a planning commission, what government is trying to do? The government is trying to direct. The government is trying to create a path of economic growth. The government is trying to administer it. The government is trying to capture this economic growth. And that is why you will find the dominance of the government or the government monopoly over economic resources and the use of economic resources in this country. Every sector almost controlled by the government. And once we became independent, most of the things which were private, ठीक है, टाटा एयरलाइंस है, जो भी टाटा एयरवेज था वो इंडियन एयरलाइंस बन गया, फिर बैंक नेशनलाइजेशन हुआ, ठीक है, एंड लाइकवाइज tourism and various other areas, industries, they were basically brought into the public domain. So planning was necessary now. So planning commission लाया गया so that the inter-regional differences, the intra-regional differences must be eliminated. The disparate growth which is there must be eliminated. Right. That was the idea of the planning commission, and that is why planning commission was brought into picture. But the biggest problem is what? The planning commission also could not understand. Could not understand that the economic growth is not going to create this distribution. So economic growth can happen, but economic growth may not lead to the impact that we want. So planning commission is cited as a perfect example. It is the embodiment of the Nehruvian socialism, the ideals of Nehruvian socialism. Right? Worked for 60 years almost and failed. Why did it fail? Because obviously it bypassed some federal relations. There were a lot of other problems, political issues were also there. But at the same time, planning commission became an armchair approach. Technocrats, specialists, economists, they are sitting there who have never visited the field, and they did not realize that what socio-cultural problems exist at the ground level. They believed that whatever they did is going to be translated into the actual result, which never happened. This is a very big example of how the growth may not lead to development. In fact, the growth may hinder the development if the growth is captured by few. Now, Article 39B, 39C of Indian Constitution. किसी को पता? DPSP. It is part of DPSP. Anybody knows? DPSP Part 4. Memory is a very integral part of analysis. Memory is very important. You need to remember things. Right, so you have DPSP, you have Part 4, Article 36 to 51. DPSP. 39B or C क्या बोलता है? That the government or the state must restrict or discourage the accumulation of wealth or monopolization of resources into the hands of few. Now, as DPSP is a non-enforceable part, अब लीगली नहीं जा सकते कोर्ट में, तो ये ऑब्वियस है कि भाई अंबानी जो है वो 6,000 करोड़ का घर बना सकता है या वॉट एवर, 13 बिल्डिंग्स बना, 13 फ्लोर्स का जो है हाउस बना सकता है. And you can spend people like Mittal, Lakshmi Mittal can spend a lot of money or whatever, Reddy, Bangalore, right? So they can do all that. Okay, obviously because this is not justiciable. We cannot force the government to control certain people who are earning a lot of money. We cannot stop it. But yes, through the taxation, through the what we say cess, through the imposition of certain kinds of provisionings, rationing on certain things, and likewise we can definitely restrict this, but not directly. We cannot just take away money from somebody and give it to somebody. This cannot happen. So this basically aims at creating this distribution. Fine. So Indian constitution itself, the Indian political system itself has these elements, right? But the logic was that we were dependent. We did not have technology. Okay, import substitution karna tha. We did not have industrial growth. Our GDP was negative. Our population rate was very high. So we had to look into all these factors. Okay, and then we had hostile neighbors and all those things. There were a number of things responsible for that. So based on that, what we did, we were also forced to somewhat imbibe the Western practices, obviously somewhere around 1980s and 90s. That is where we go for LPG reforms. It became inevitable. Fine. But even prior to that, even individually within our own country, we followed the industrial model. If you see from the second plan onwards, we went for the industrial plan. Fine. Known as the Mahalanobis model. Right. So, all said and done, over the time we talk about it. So, these are various examples where we say development was not necessarily happening, but growth was happening, and this was the entire agenda of the Western country, that let them focus on economic growth and productivity, let them use technology, we will financially support them, we'll give them managerial and technical know-how, though we'll not make them technologically independent, we'll make them technologically dependent on us, and so that we can now have access to their markets and consumers. Right. Now DA was basically created for that purpose, or development approach or development administration was basically trying to study the requirements of these developing societies based on this agenda. But yes, good things also happen along with bad things, no doubt spillover effects are always there. So over the time, the DA got broken into, you see, the pro-Western and the no-Western. Right? It got broken into the pro-Western and no-Western. That means there were a lot of scholars who came from the Western culture and they supported the Western model of growth. Whereas there were a number of scholars from the Western countries itself who criticized this model, and there were a number of people who emerged from the non-Western countries also who actually criticized this model. These people came to be known as the anti-development theorists, right? Or counter-development theorists. The anti-development theorists or the counter-development theorists were basically those people who were not against development, but they were against the Western model of development. Right? So they are known as anti-development scholars or counter-development scholars. There is a part in your syllabus, but the idea comes from here. This is what the context is around it. So whether we talk about Gandhian model, whether we talk about Amartya Sen, he's a pro-Western scholar, no doubt, but the idea that he talks about is very different. Okay. Though I would say he's studied in the pro-Western culture, but he's not talking about Western model. Right. Then we have Joseph Stiglitz, who is more of this. He's a very famous economist. Fine. Then you have the Banerjee, recently won the Nobel Prize, and likewise the people, right? Abhijit Banerjee, and likewise. So there are people, okay, who can be categorized as Gandhian model. Okay, then the Tagore's model, then what we the Ambedkar's model. And there are so many other models that we talk about. Swadeshi, Atmanirbharta kya hai? Ek anti-development model hai. Right. But it has evolved over the time. Right. So over the time what happens? The concepts of new CPA जिसमें कोई literature नहीं है, theory नहीं है, कोई book नहीं है, बहुत important aspect है, ठीक है, जिसको हम बहुत सारे journals से पढ़ते हैं. We cannot have a content on that. There is no content in fact on that. New CPA, new DA, anti-development. So Mohit Bhattacharya has written a little bit about it, but not in the actual sense of giving an answer that we can write. So we'll have to imply these things, link it to the various dimensions, and then only we can understand it. New deal. Fine? So यहाँ पे और भी ये चीजें और बहुत सारे फैक्टर्स ऐड हो जाते हैं. पॉवर्टी, then obviously what we talked about development, then human development, then एक बहुत important aspect of the women and development. Right? Women issues are always asked. They are very important. In fact, women development, pro-women stance, criticism of patriarchy, and the issues of women development and empowerment, they have become regular features of the essays in UPSC, of the GS questions, and obviously of the public administration and other options also. Sociology may be बहुत dominant है. So when we talk about, let us say, so a brief discussion can be done. And we have a lot of women in the class also. Many of them are never present. Right? But yes, they must be listening. So they should be ready for their opinions here. Right? So we have women empowerment, women development now. So women issues or women developmental issues becomes a very important area of development administration. Right? Environmental issues become a very important, environmental governance becomes a very important area, and a combination of women and environmental issue also becomes a very important area. Now when we talk about women issues, so we talk about empowerment. What exactly is empowerment? What is the context of women empowerment? What are the historical perspectives on that? See, generally we don't study that. Once they have asked this question, women in development, women and development, gender and development, these are various facets of women empowerment. Right? What do you understand by women empowerment? I hope all the males in the class are quite happy with this term. Theoretically, they are very happy. Practically, they may not take it in stride, right? Because this is creating a lot of conflict in traditional societies like India. Any answers we have for women empowerment?
Economic liberation of women.
You're right, correct. Economic liberation, economic self-reliance is one aspect, no doubt. Very important aspect, in fact. Anything else? Now, see, there is a difference. When we talk about societies like India, which are patriarchal, in fact, entire world is patriarchal. कोई और भी है?
Giving equal right to
Men and women?
one's life in every term.
Right, it is freedom, like absolute freedom.
Srinivas, women empowerment talks decision making choices.
Yeah, right. Decision making, correct.
Equity of opportunities and resources.
Correct. So we already have intelligent students. That is the beauty of PubAd. Right. You become automatically intelligent the moment you join PubAd. Right. But then it should be with the right teacher also. Okay. So let us say we talk about women empowerment, women developmental issues. Now, in a patriarchal society, it is obvious. In fact, the entire world is patriarchal, right? It's not. It cannot be a relegation on the Indian society, or for that matter, traditional societies and the South Asian politics. No, it cannot be that. The allegation can be put. America आज तक president नहीं है, right? So India में तो at least India has symbolically empowered women. We had women chief minister, we had women freedom fighters, we have women prime minister, women governors, women lieutenant governors, women DGPs, president, a lot of things. But that would be more symbolic, yes, I would say. But at least in the Western countries, we don't find symbolic also. Okay. France, Germany, Canada, बहुत सारी countries में है, it has happened. Okay. Britain, it happens. Fine, it is there. Germany, okay. So ये है, no doubt, I understand. But see, when we talk about empowerment, we have to understand a very important aspect. Can empowerment be given, or it can be sought, it can be taken? Now, when we talk about the women empowerment and issues, women development, we have to go to the historical perspective and understand that the Western context of women empowerment and the non-Western context of women empowerment is very different. Right? Let us say India gave the universal adult franchise to everyone, irrespective of various castes, communities, and gender divisions in this society. That means, as the constitution was enforced, adopted in Act 26 November 1949 and 26 January 1950, right, the women became equal to men. Legally, politically, constitutionally. Not socio-culturally, yes. It has not happened today also. Right? But they became equal in the eyes of the state, in the eyes of the law, as per the vision of the constitution. They were equal. Now, women in the Western countries, including Europe and USA, had to wage a war against the state to get the right to vote. Right? They had to wage a war against the state, known as the suffragette movement. The suffragette movements. अब ये स्टार्ट हुआ, ठीक है. That means politically the women became conscious now of their rights. So see, they had to fight a war, they had to wage a war against the state, they had to go for, protest, dharna, whatever, to get these rights. Whereas women in India automatically got these rights. कौन ज़्यादा empowered है? Obviously Indian women. Fine? But ये empowerment legal, political, formal ज़्यादा है, informal नहीं है. In their society, they had to seek formal power, formal equality, but informally they were treated quite better compared to the non-Western societies. So दोनों processes वहाँ पे अलग अलग हैं. हाँ, but the net purpose है वो more or less same. So the feminist movement started in US late 1940s, okay, peaked in 1960s somewhere around. Okay, that is known as the feminist movement. There is a difference between gender and sex. Gender is a sociological construct. Right? It is a sociological construct, and sex is a biological construct. The difference is acceptable. Biological, physiological. Acceptable. Fine? But when these biological differences are amplified in the form of one as strong and the other as weak, it becomes a gender construct, a sociological construct. This is what we are fighting, not this. So feminist movement started, and obviously they snowballed into radical movement, liberal movement, right? Marxist radical movement, and there were various strands of this feminist movement, right? So from here, the concept, or somewhere the global consensus regarding the women-related issues, the political rights of women, the social status of women, and how to transform that social status and how to use those political rights, that emerges. And obviously the wave enters India also somewhere 1970s, 80s. While you see increasing participation of women in the environmental movement, Chipko movement एक बहुत बड़ा example है, right? The Green Belt movement, Kenya, is a big example, third world perspective. Wangari Maathai got Nobel Prize for that. Right? Vandana Shiva, organic farming movement in India. Okay. And that too, the environmentalism led by women, most of the women. So women's participation in resource management, their movement in the conservation of natural resources, their movement in the elimination of social evils, okay, like Gujarat में, Bombay में, okay, alcohol ban से जो movement start हुए, right? And ऐसे बहुत सारे movements start हुए, temple entry movement, and likewise, whatever happened. Now they somewhere indicated that the new social movements are emerging. Okay, that means the exploitation was still there, but this exploitation was very subtle, and it was never taken into cognizance when we were trying to understand the social structure of our society. When we were trying to understand or resolve the problems, social problems of society, we neglected them. They were kept at back burner. Right? So from here it starts. So Western and non-Western context has to be understood. Empowerment has to be understood, that empowerment is something not given. Right? Empowerment is the acceptance and a gratitude, okay, which the rest of the society, that is the 50% of the society, the male, the patriarchal society, must have towards women and their contribution in diverse forms. And this gratitude, this acceptance will lead to the creation of space, or you can say a voluntary retreat from all those spaces where they have encroached into the domains of women. That is the idea of the women empowerment, right? So it is about equality of opportunity, no doubt. Right? It is about putting women into the power positions in the society. It is about making them economically self-reliant and independent. Right? It is also making them equal in terms of opportunities, privileges, in terms of status within the family and outside both. Right? So this is a very important area, this is a very important dimension which is asked both in paper 1 and paper 2. In your essay, in fact, a PubEd student or sociology student can write very well. The drawback with sociology student would be that he would be more theoretical or she would be more theoretical. The PubEd student would be more practical in terms of understanding. So these issues have confronted us and they have changed the developmental model, they have changed the orientation of development, they have changed how we are going to pursue development here. Right? So environmental and women, environmental conservation and women, this also becomes very important. Okay, considering the impact of technology, globalization, global trade, now environmental issues also become very important agenda in the study of development. Now, this is not given in, obviously, the syllabus. Women is given, no doubt. But we infer, we imply certain things from there and we say that, okay, this is how we are creating the scope of our syllabus. So environmental issues, environmental governance becomes now the center of the global governance, and which not only links the global institutions and the nation states, but also it is going to link the local institutions, the local governments in all those areas. So from local to national to global, that is what the linkage has to be established when we think of the environmental issues. So why environmental issues became so important? Right? Now there is a third world perspective and there is a first world perspective. Or there is a Western perspective, there is a non-Western perspective. So we and no we perspective. Western, non-Western. Now the Western perspective is concerned about the ozone layer. Right? It is concerned about the melting of ice caps, polar ice caps, glaciers, flooding, disasters. It is concerned with all those things. Pollution, reducing oxygen, increasing carbon dioxide, increasing sulfur dioxide, increasing methane, increasing this, increasing greenhouse gases, and transforming how the practices and the usage of certain utilities in the Western and non-Western countries. Now why they are so concerned? Because now they feel threatened, because they have saturated the environment. They have excessively used the water, they have excessively used the natural resources, they have excessively used the biosphere also, atmosphere also, okay, lithosphere also, hydrosphere also, they have excessively used all this. And now they are threatened of their own survival. So what they are doing? They are shifting the onus, the burden of responsibilities on the on the non-Western societies which have been traditional. Now let us say Indian society has traditionally followed the sustainable development practices. Right? We don't do misuse of water. Right? We are that kind of society. Right? We plant trees. We worship trees. Okay, there are a lot of rituals associated with nature. You see the tribals, they actually protect, promote, worship the nature. They are in tune with the nature. And likewise, so when we see Indian or most of the non-Western countries, they have a lot of respect, subservience, regard for nature, not because nature is providing them a lot of benefits, but because they are traditionally associated and their existence is associated with this nature. Right? Are you getting this point? So let us say, okay, why they have become conscious? We are already conscious. In fact, we have a tradition of non-materialism where we don't want to consume. Okay, overconsumption is not accepted. Right? The concept of paap, punya, dharma, adharma, right? Ethics, morality, too much followed in our societies. We have in fact invented zero. We are minimalist, right? So see, we have been traditionally involved in sustainable development. But now this global agenda of Kyoto Protocol, Cartagena Protocol, Montreal Protocol, and this protocol, and Rio Earth Summit, and UNFCCC, we will talk about all those things in our governance paper also. Right? People who might be, doing that. So in PubMed also we'll talk about it. So clean development mechanism, right? Or carbon trading, ecological footprint, water footprint, okay, and all what not. We are talking about all those things. Okay, cultural footprint leading to more ecological footprint. We are talking about all those things. Okay. So logic क्या है कि अब they are threatened, so they are shifting this burden here. So it is more of global politics. Right? Concern is there, we don't deny that, but we have to understand the actual the dimensions of this development or these environmental issues and sustainable development that is emerging. From the third world perspective also, from the first world perspective also, from the multilateral institutions perspective also. Right? So we cannot simply accept it as it is and write it whatever is there without the analysis. Right? We already have a sustainable development model. We are following that. It is already in place. Okay? It is our natural, historical, cultural practices which we follow. Right? So, okay, a lot of corporate companies, they are benefiting out of this. आपने एक नॉर्म चेंज कर दिया, यूरो 4, यूरो 5, BS4, BS6, whatever, ठीक है? ऑटोमोबाइल इंडस्ट्री चेंज हो गई, प्रेफरेंसेस चेंज हो गए, लॉस चेंज हो गए, सारा बर्डन जो है किस पे आ रहा है? जो मिडिल क्लास कंज्यूमर्स हैं, जो एवरेज कंज्यूमर्स हैं, डेवलपिंग सोसाइटीज के अंदर. Right? So we'll talk about all that area. So environmental issues become one important area, which is to be studied in development administration. Okay, this also gives us the scope to study the institutions like NGT, the role of Supreme Court, the Central Pollution Control Board, the State Pollution Control Board, what have been the environmental policy, the new environmental policy that is still in the docs, the National Forest Act, the Forest Conservation Act, the Forest Rights Act 2005, PESA, Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas Act, and likewise 5th Schedule, 6th Schedule. There are a lot of areas which we can study concerning this. And this is how, see, we are linking the paper 2 to paper 1. Right? There is nothing like linkage, done forcibly. No forcible linkage there. Right? So DA would involve these kind of issues, poverty and likewise. Right? Another important area is the public policy in paper 1. Like these are similar areas, right? Public policies, obviously, we have to first simply understand what is a policy. Policy is a course of action. It is a set of decisions or set of processes that the government needs to follow or government decides to pursue something. Policy is an action plan with a vision. Without vision, the policy does not exist. Right? So policy has both things. How to act and towards what we have to act. Right? When to act. So it has both the aspects. It has vision plus it has action. Okay, goal भी है, larger goal है जो कि quantifiable नहीं है, और actions हैं, small activities हैं जो quantifiable हैं, which are more related to resource. Right? Policy क्या है? Policy is basically made by the government. It has all the aspects like we study when we talk about public policy. So we say policy is coming from the word politics. Right? Power, basically. So policy is basically what is done by the government, right, or by the government or by the executive. Right. So executive somewhere controls administration. So both are involved in policy. Now public administration obviously is not much concerned with policy of role of executive. It is more concerned with policy role of administration. So public policy perspective emerged again in 1960s, and its specific focus was obviously to understand that how the government decision can be improved, and whether a student of public administration, a scholar of public administration would be or should be interested in studying the politics also, or the political part or the administrative part only. So here the major concern was to know this, that should we study the politics? Politics means the political part, state, government. The administrative part, the administration, bureaucracy, public administration. Now, why this difference? These people are officials. They are selected through an examination, recruited. These people are politicians. They are elected, not selected. Okay, they are more or less permanent for 30-35 years. They are not. They have greater powers they don't have. Fine? They derive directly powers from the legislature or the constitution, and they can make them accountable, they can control them. They reflect the will of people, they don't. There's a lot of difference. They make the decision, they implement. So the concern of administration or public administration should be to only understand the implementation. The concern of public administration should not be to read this as per the subject. Fine? But what happened? It was realized in 1960s that this is a very narrow view of understanding public administration. The administration, if it is the means to achieve things, if it is doing things, then it must also know what it is doing, for whom it is doing, what is the purpose of what it is doing. If you don't link it, then it will be like delinking your brain from your hands and assuming that the hands will work independently of the brain, which is not possible. So action and intention. Okay, decision making and decision implementation, they cannot be segregated, they cannot be totally separated from each other. Understanding this? So the domain of public policy actually studies this. Earlier, by dividing them, understanding in that term, then assuming or understanding that it is not possible to separate them, so we must link it. The administration has to play a role in policy making also. The higher level bureaucracy, the higher level administrators, the private secretaries to the minister, the principal secretary to the minister, the secretary to the government of India, secretary to any chief minister. Who are these people? They are the advisors. They are the eyes, hands and ears of these politicians. They are the think tanks. They are the brains of them or these ministers. So it is quite logical that their involvement, if not directly, indirectly it is there. So another scope emerged of study in public administration, that we must study public policy or we must study policy science. We must know that to what extent the role of administration or public administration is there in the policy process. So it includes certain things like we study policy formulation, right? Then we study policy implementation. Then we study policy evaluation, right? So formulation, implementation, evaluation, and then finally the feedback. There is emerging another area, right, which we say that, do you agree with the logic that we are formulating the policy? But formulation is the next part, it is the next stage. If we go back do you think that there would have been some thought process, some thinking behind this formulation? We also need to know, okay, what is the goal? Okay, rather than formulating on the goal, we also need to know what is the goal. We also need to understand that can there be an input to understanding the goal itself, and can there be different methods of formulating things, or is this the correct issue on which we have to formulate? Are you getting it? So today when we talk about public policy, the arena of public policy, some new perspectives are emerging which says that there should be a pre-policy formulation stage also. So pre-policy formulation is the next step, then the implementation, then the evaluation, then the feedback, and all must be linked together. Like, what should we do? How should we do? Or how to make it and understand it? How to implement it? Then see what happens, whether the consequence is right or not. How to know that consequence is right or not? Take the feedback from the people or the lower level administration. Again link it to what we did, what we intended to. So what is the gap between the intention and what has been achieved? What is the gap between the ambition and the realization, actual realization? So this became an important domain of study. Public policy became very popular in 1960s. In fact, public policy broke a lot of myths in public administration. Wilson's concept of dichotomy and separation was actually eliminated. Okay, new public administration, we have referred somewhere earlier. Okay, that was also somewhere against the dichotomy. And likewise, so many other new developments took place, which actually criticized that the administration and politics or political system and administrative system cannot be treated separately. Fine, they may be working in separate manner, they may be having different set of people with different calibers and qualification, but in essence their work interlocks, in essence their functions are intertwined, and they cannot be assumed or understood separately from each other. Right? So public policy has a lot of models to be understood. There are a lot of frameworks which have been developed, theoretical frameworks to understand, okay, how policy is made, what are the factors which influence the policy formulation, who makes these policies, can these policies be improved, what is the reason for failure of policies. In fact, what students do, they generally read these theoretical models, which is very complicated, it is a tough area. Fine. Not many people study all the models, that is also a drawback, and UPSC can spring surprises asking you some model which you have never seen. But we can make it predictable, okay, with obviously little effort, right, by increasing our references. Right. But what students do, they generally get stuck in the theoretical aspect. The reality is, when we are studying this topic, we also need to know the population policy, we also need to know the practical policies of our country. Population policy, environmental policy, women development, poverty, and all those policy, industrial policy, and how they have impacted, right? We can also compare these policies to the Western policies. We can collect some data around it, okay, and that is how we can make this answer better. Because this becomes purely theoretical, that is not required, because it is basically a practical aspect. So we have to understand that when we are talking about public policies, theories, concepts and principles, we also need to support or criticize them with arguments which are more factual, more information based, more data based. Okay, like we say, if our population growth rate is reducing and the GDP is increasing, then we can expect the increase in per capita income, right? But this can only happen when there is no corruption, or when there is no pilferage, when there is no leakage of this resource. So we need to go for technology, e-governance, right? When we go for e-governance, it creates a lot of problems, digital literacy or digital divide, okay, which is very rampant in India. We are facing digital divide. We are facing digital, disparity in terms of the distribution of the broadband benefits, right? अब इंटरनेट सर्विस प्रोवाइडर अगर इस क्लास को रोक दे, हम क्या करेंगे बताओ? So आप बोलेंगे अरे क्लास स्लो हो गई, रुक गई, ये हो गया. But these are all the limitations which we all are facing. Why? Because we have till now not developed a strong technological infrastructure. There are a lot of technology deficient areas still in this country, and we think of linking all the panchayats, 2.5 lakh panchayats or gram panchayats, with the broadband. If you have heard of the BharatNet program, yeah, National Optical Fiber Network program, right? And a lot of programs are there related to that. Are you understanding? So the logic is that if we are understanding the impact of policies, the reach of policies, if we are trying to understand how technically you can say realistically the policies have fared in India, we need to do a thorough statistical factual analysis of that, and it cannot be just understood in terms of theories and certain concepts. Right? So China 2 child norm, फिर 1 child norm, अब चाइना जो 1 child norm से फिर 2 child norm पे आ रहा है. इंडिया में चाइल्ड नॉर्म या पॉपुलेशन कंट्रोल नहीं एक्सरसाइज किया जा सकता. Okay, what we have seen the results of that. Obviously, okay, we are a democracy, we need to have a different perspective on that. But then, literacy can be one way, reinforcement can be one way, use of media, audio, video, medium, use of social media, okay, use of other community pressure, peer pressure, and all those things can be used here in India, right? But then it will create some other problems. So you have to understand why a particular policy fails, okay, not in vacuum or isolation of other policies. ठीक है? तो चाइल्ड लेबर को रोकने के लिए पहले पॉपुलेशन पॉलिसी का भी, पॉपुलेशन कंट्रोल करना भी जरूरी है, पॉवर्टी एलिमिनेट करना भी जरूरी है, स्किल डेवलपमेंट करना भी जरूरी है, ओके, लीगल इम्पोजिशंस भी स्ट्रांग होने चाहिए, नेशनल कमीशन फॉर चाइल्ड प्रोटेक्शन या चाइल्ड राइट्स okay, strong hona chahiye, right? Then the identification, the role of NGOs, the role of these welfare societies, the role of government administration must also be strong enough to control. Now see, so there is a requirement of an entire ecosystem by which a particular policy works, right? And this is where the public administration students has or have an edge over the students from the other disciplines, right? So I think today we will stop here. Okay. So day by day I am going to increase the number of hours. So we'll finally reach 2.5, 3 hours. Okay, over let's say 2-3 days, because that is very important. But yes, don't get overheated. Right. Your engines must remain proper. Overhead transmission should not happen. Right. Overheating should not take place. And you have, like I told you, your answers would be available by tonight, 8-9, they will be mailed to you, right? And we'll have a discussion on that, but you will get, because we're not concerned with the answers, I will discuss the answers, okay, after checking your answers only. Right. So I've checked few, I think 2 copies, rest I will do it and send it to you. And meanwhile, what you do, kindly revise the lectures, make notes from what we are doing. These are more of pre or introduction classes, right? At least 7 to 8 classes will be there, which will help you know the entire scope and the dimensions of the public administration that we are going to study, right? And then we'll start with the concept class. Concept class means that we'll talk about various approaches. It will take hardly 2 classes for that, but it is very dynamic in nature. So most of the vocabulary of PubAd, at least paper 1, most of the concepts will be dealt there, but it will, or it can be done easily when you have understood what we are doing now, right? So tomorrow we'll start from here, and then we'll deal with paper 2 also. That is also very important to be understood. Fine. So all of you, take care. Thank you so much for your time. And technically we have now improved, don't worry. And it is just a simple process, but it may take sometimes little time. Okay. So have faith in us, trust in us, and you are going to do good. Thank you so much for your